The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 kilometers of vacuum-sealed space, its ring-shaped architecture allowing representatives from 247 species to observe from their orbiting pods. Light from a captured neutron star filtered through crystalline viewing panels, casting everything in shades of cold blue and white. Ambassador Tikar of the Valthari Empire adjusted his ceremonial mantle, the fabric woven from the silk of 1,000 conquered worlds. He had seen species come and go. He had watched empires crumble. Nothing in his 400 years of service had prepared him for what stood before the council now. The human delegation numbered exactly 7. They wore no ceremonial garb, no diplomatic robes. Their suits were functional, black, unadorned. Their leader, a man named Sauron, had skin weathered by suns that weren't his own and eyes that had seen things Tikar couldn't imagine. The Valthari ambassador had studied humanity extensively after the First Contact War. He knew their history. He knew their capacity for destruction. What he didn't know was why they had requested this emergency session. "Honored representatives," Sauron began, his voice carrying through the chamber's universal translation matrix. "Earth has endured 12 incursions into our territorial space over the past 3 cycles. We have issued warnings. We have offered diplomatic solutions. We have absorbed losses without retaliation." Tikar's mandibles clicked in amusement. The humans had done more than absorb losses. They had obliterated 3 Valthari border fleets. They had turned the Hadrian Nebula into a graveyard so dense that salvage operations remained impossible. And now they stood here, playing the victim. "Your losses represent a fraction of what you've inflicted," Tikar interrupted, his translator converting his guttural speech into standard galactic. "Humanity's aggression has destabilized the outer territories. Your so-called defensive actions have created a security crisis." Sauron turned to face the Valthari representative. The human's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in his posture. Tikar had seen predators before. He had faced creatures that could tear through starship hulls. But this human stillness carried a weight that made the ancient Valthari warrior feel something he hadn't experienced in centuries: unease. "Ambassador Tikar," Sauron said, "your species attacked Earth first. You landed on our soil with plasma casters and enslavement collars. You killed 2 million of us before we even understood what you were. We gave you every opportunity to withdraw. We offered peace 10 times. You rejected us each time." The chamber fell silent. Other species watched the exchange with growing interest. The Creel, insected negotiators known for their impartiality, leaned forward in their pod. The Athari, energy beings who communicated through frequency modulation, flickered with concern. "History is written by the survivors," Tikar responded. "You survived. That doesn't mean your version is accurate." "History is irrelevant to this discussion." Sauron raised his hand, and the chamber's holographic display activated. Images appeared, not of battles or weapons, but of something else entirely. Tikar recognized the mathematical symbols. He recognized the physics equations. What he didn't recognize was the structure they described. 12 cycles ago," Sauron continued, "humanity completed a project we never wanted to finish. We called it the Fallback Protocol. Its purpose was simple. If humanity faced extinction, if our species was going to die, we would make certain we didn't die alone." A Creel representative spoke, her voice clicking with urgency. "What are you showing us?" Sauron turned to face the chamber. Every human colony, every major city, every military vessel contains a device. These devices are linked. They form a network that spans our entire territory. When activated, he paused, and for the first time, Tikar saw something human he recognized: sorrow. When activated, the network triggers a field effect. That effect cascades across the galaxy. It targets fundamental forces: gravity, electromagnetism. The strong and weak nuclear interactions, they all collapse. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted over each other, their translation systems struggling to keep pace. Tikar rose from his seat, his ceremonial mantle falling away as he revealed his warrior's frame. "You're bluffing," he snarled. "No species has the technology to affect fundamental forces. It's impossible." Soren met his gaze. "Your scientists believed it was impossible to break the speed of light. We did it anyway. Your military believed it was impossible to defend against plasma weapons. We found a way. Your entire civilization believed humanity was primitive, weak, destined for conquest." The human's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried through the chamber. "We have been underestimated before. It never ends well for those who do the underestimating." A Athari representative pulsed with angry light. "You're threatening us. You're sitting in this chamber and threatening the entire galaxy." "I'm warning you," Soren's voice hardened. "Humanity has survived extinction twice. Once during our ice age when our population dropped below 10,000, again during our nuclear era when we came within minutes of destroying ourselves. We learned from those experiences. We learned that existence is fragile. We learned that species who don't prepare die, so we prepared." T-Car's mandibles clicked with derision. "You expect us to believe that you've created a galaxy-destroying weapon out of fear. That's not preparation. That's madness." The human smiled. It wasn't the smile of a politician or a diplomat. It was the smile of someone who had done something terrible and accepted the burden. "Every species in this chamber has a fail-safe. Every military has a doomsday protocol. You have planet killers. The Creel have bioweapons. The Athari have mass driver arrays. But none of you ever planned for the worst-case scenario. None of you ever asked, what if we lose? What if we're wiped out? What if our enemy doesn't just conquer us? What if they erase us?" Soren walked to the center of the chamber. The holographic display followed him, showing mathematical models that made T-Car's cognitive processors ache. "We asked that question. We answered it. And the answer was this: if humanity dies, everything dies with us. That's the only way we could ensure that no one would ever try to finish what the Ice Age started. The only way to make certain that our extinction would never be profitable." The Creel representative's voice trembled. "You're holding the galaxy hostage." "We're holding ourselves hostage." Soren gestured, and the holographic display showed Earth from orbit. The planet was beautiful, blue, green, alive. Every human on every world is a living trigger. If we die, the network activates. If we're killed, the network activates. If our civilization collapses, the network activates. There's no override. There's no off switch. There's only survival. T-Car felt his warrior's instincts warring with his political training. This was insane. No species would willingly turn themselves into a weapon. No civilization would accept such a burden. But the human's eyes told him otherwise. Soren wasn't lying. He wasn't even exaggerating. "You've made yourselves a target," T-Car said. "Every species in this chamber will now consider you a threat. You've guaranteed war." "We were already at war." Soren's voice carried no anger. "The only difference is that now you understand the stakes. Attack us again. Attack any human colony, any human vessel, any human presence in this galaxy, and the network activates. Not because we want it to, because it will, because we built it that way." The chamber fell silent. Representatives looked at each other, their various species expressions reflecting a single unified emotion: disbelief. No one could threaten the entire galaxy. No one would be so desperate, so broken, so willing to burn everything down. Soren raised his hand and pressed something on his wrist. The holographic display changed. It showed a colony world, New Terra, one of humanity's outer settlements. T-Car watched as a fleet of Valthari warships descended. He recognized the formation. It was the 5th Assault Wing, the same wing that had been destroyed at Hadrian. "This was 6 cycles ago," Soren said. "The 5th Wing attacked New Terra. They killed 47,000 civilians before we could respond, but the civilians fought back. They activated a smaller version of the network, a localized cascade. The 5th Wing was destroyed. So was every creature, every device, every piece of technology within 1,000,000 kilometers of New Terra." T-Car's blood ran thick and cold. He remembered that battle. His own nephew had commanded the Fifth Wing. The official reports claimed a solar flare had destroyed the fleet. The real reports had said nothing, only that the fleet had vanished without a trace. That was a warning, Soren continued. A demonstration. We could have activated the full network then. We chose not to because we are not monsters. We are not conquerors. We are survivors, and we will not allow anyone to take our survival from us. He turned to face the council representatives, his gaze sweeping across the assembled species. I have said what I came to say. Your council has 3 cycles to respond. 3 cycles to guarantee that no aggressive action will be taken against humanity. 3 cycles to prove that the galaxy is worth saving. Soren walked toward the exit, his delegation following in perfect formation. At the threshold, he paused and looked back. Because if you fail, he said, if one more human dies in a war we never wanted, then we have nothing left to protect. And when we have nothing left to protect, we have nothing left to lose. 6 cycles before the ultimatum, Ambassador T-Car had been a military commander. He had led the Valthari Empire's 5th Assault Wing with distinction, conquering 14 systems in as many months. He had seen civilizations surrender without a fight. He had watched species prostrate themselves before his fleet, begging for mercy. He had never expected to be the one running. The Battle of New Terra was supposed to be an execution. Intelligence reports indicated that the human colony had minimal defenses, a population of 50,000, and no orbital fortifications. The Valthari Empire needed a demonstration of power. They needed to show the galaxy that no species was beyond their reach. New Terra was a message. T-Car's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge. 27 warships, each capable of glassing a continent. 3 support carriers packed with ground troops. A command vessel armed with enough plasma firepower to crack a planet's crust. Against a single colony world, it was overkill. T-Car had expected to land, pacify the population, and move on within a single cycle. The humans didn't surrender. Instead, they launched everything they had. Civilian vessels converted into kinetic missiles. Surface-to-orbit cannons firing debris accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. They even used their own satellite network as a weapon, dropping it onto T-Car's support carriers. The destruction was catastrophic. T-Car lost 8 ships before he even reached orbital insertion. Commander, his tactical officer reported, the humans are broadcasting something. The officer paused, her mandibles trembling. They're singing. T-Car had heard songs before. Species used music for celebration, for mourning, for communication. But these humans sang with voices that carried no fear. They sang about home, about children, about a future they knew they'd never see. They sang because they had nothing left to lose. Order the assault, T-Car commanded. No survivors. I want the planet reduced to ash. The fleet descended. Plasma cannons fired. Orbital strikes carved canyons into the surface. T-Car watched from his command vessel as cities burned. He expected to feel triumph. Instead, he felt something he couldn't name. The human resistance lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of fighting against impossible odds. 6 hours of dying without surrender. When the Valthari ground troops finally landed, they found children operating anti-ship weapons. They found civilians stacking corpses as barricades. They found a species that had already accepted death and was simply choosing how to meet it. My commander, a ground officer's voice crackled through the calm. We've located a human facility beneath the surface. It's emitting a massive energy signature. We're attempting to breach its defenses. T-Car felt his predatory instincts flare. Secure the facility. I want it intact. The officer hesitated. Commander, the energy signature is erratic. It appears to be a weapon of some kind, but the readings don't correspond to any known technology. T-Car's blood ran cold. He remembered the briefing before the assault. Intelligence had mentioned something about human research into entropy-based technologies. They had dismissed it as primitive speculation. They had been wrong. "Pull back," he ordered. "Evacuate the surface immediately." But it was too late. The entire planet's crust erupted in a wave of energy that moved faster than light. T-Car watched from orbit as the field expanded, consuming his fleet's positions, consuming the ground troops, consuming everything in its path. The energy didn't destroy matter, it unmade it. Atoms came apart. Molecules dissolved. Forces that held existence together simply stopped functioning. T-Car's command vessel was caught at the edge of the cascade. Alarms blared. Power systems failed. The ship's hull began to separate at the molecular level. T-Car grabbed his emergency pod and launched. He watched his vessel, his command, his pride, unravel into nothing. The fifth assault wing ceased to exist in less than a minute. When T-Car woke from his survival-induced stasis, he was floating in the system's void. The emergency pod's life support had kept him alive, but nothing else remained. No ships, no debris, nothing. The system was empty. New Terra was gone. His fleet was gone. Everything was gone. He spent 4 cycles in isolation, drifting through space until a salvage ship found him. They didn't recognize him. His ceremonial markings had been burned away, his mandibles scarred, his eyes haunted. He spent another cycle in recovery, piecing together what had happened. The human weapon wasn't just a doomsday device. It was a statement. They had destroyed their own colony to destroy his fleet. They had chosen extinction over surrender. When T-Car finally returned to Valthari space, he was changed. His military career was over. His reputation was destroyed. He had lost the fleet. He had lost his nephew. He had lost everything that mattered. But he had gained something else: understanding. Commander T-Car. His superior, Admiral Veth, greeted him in the Imperial chambers. The Admiral's scales were polished, his ceremonial armor immaculate, his posture betraying nothing. "You've been through a great ordeal." "I've been through a war we can't win," T-Car responded. His voice was flat, empty. "The humans will not surrender. They will not negotiate. They will not compromise. Their survival instinct overrides everything else. It overrides reason, logic, the preservation of their own species. If they face extinction, they won't die alone." Veth's mandibles clicked dismissively. "You're traumatized. The loss of the fifth wing has affected your judgment. The humans are a primitive species with a single colony. They survived one battle. That doesn't make them invincible. They sacrificed their own world to destroy my fleet." T-Car leaned forward, his damaged mandibles making his voice harsh. "They activated a weapon that consumed everything in the system, including themselves. They chose death over defeat. That's not primitive behavior. That's not desperation. That's something we don't understand." Veth waved his claws dismissively. "Emotions. You're letting emotions cloud your analysis. The humans are an emotional species. They make decisions based on fear, on anger, on irrational impulses. They will collapse eventually. They will fracture. They will destroy themselves without our help." T-Car felt something break inside him. He had expected understanding. He had expected his superiors to recognize the threat. Instead, he saw the same arrogance that had led the Valthari Empire into every war they'd ever lost. They couldn't accept that a species they considered inferior might actually be dangerous. "Admiral," T-Car said, his voice barely a whisper, "we have fought 50 wars in the past 1,000 cycles. We have conquered 100 species. We have never faced an enemy that was willing to destroy itself to defeat us. Do you understand what that means? It means our victory was always assured because our enemies valued survival more than victory. The humans don't. They value survival, yes, but they value something else more. They value not losing." Veth's scales rippled with annoyance. "And what is that something else?" T-Car met his superior's gaze. "Dignity, pride, the knowledge that their existence mattered. If they can't have that, they'll take everything with them. They'll make certain that no one benefits from their destruction." The admiral dismissed him from the chamber. Tikar was stripped of his rank, his titles, his place in Valthari society. He was sent to a re-education facility where the Empire's leaders attempted to correct his thinking. They failed. Tikar's understanding of humanity had been forged in fire and ash. It couldn't be erased. Years passed. Tikar watched from obscurity as the Valthari Empire continued to push against human space. He watched the attacks grow bolder, the casualties mount, the political climate shift toward war. He watched the Galactic Council dismiss human warnings as propaganda. He watched species after species choose arrogance over understanding. Then came the ultimatum. Sauron stood in the council chamber and delivered humanity's message. Tikar watched from his remote pod, his scarred mandibles trembling. He had known. He had always known. The humans weren't bluffing. They had created the weapon because they remembered extinction. They had built it because they would never let themselves be erased again. As the council erupted in chaos, Tikar closed his eyes and remembered New Terra. He remembered the children singing. He remembered the civilians building barricades from their own dead. He remembered the wave of entropy that consumed everything, including the planet itself. The humans were not conquerors. They were not warmongers. They were survivors in the most terrifying sense of the word. They had survived extinction twice. They had learned from those experiences. They had built a weapon that would ensure no one ever tried to take their survival from them again. Tikar opened his eyes and watched the human delegation leave. He knew what came next. He had seen it in his nightmares for cycles. The council would refuse to believe. The militarists would push for preemptive strikes. The politicians would offer meaningless compromises. And the humans would respond as they always had, not with anger, not with fear, but with calculation. They would do whatever it took to survive. The galaxy had made a terrible mistake. They had treated humanity as a primitive species, an easy conquest, a footnote in their expansion. They hadn't understood that humanity's true threat wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their memory. It was their fear. It was their absolute, unshakable refusal to die alone. Tikar watched Sauron's delegation board their shuttle and depart. He watched the council chamber dissolve into argument. He watched the representatives of 100 species deny the truth of what they just witnessed. And he knew that the warning had been given. The rest was up to them. He also knew that most of them would make the wrong choice. The Valthari Empire would push for war. The Tyrol Ascendancy would plot a preemptive strike. The Creel would try to negotiate, believing they could find a compromise. They were all wrong. They were all missing the point. The humans had offered them a choice. They could accept humanity's terms, allow them to exist in their corner of the galaxy and survive. Or they could push. They could attack. They could try to destroy the threat. And then they would find out that the threat was already too late to destroy. They would find out that humanity had prepared for this moment for generations. They would find out that the fallback protocol wasn't a bluff, it was a promise. Tikar watched the shuttles vanish into the void. The war was coming. He could feel it in his bones, in his scars, in the cold emptiness where his hope used to live. The war was coming, and when it arrived, everyone would learn what Tikar had learned at New Terra. Humans don't lose, they survive, and their survival always comes with a cost. The Creel delegation arrived at Earth's coordinates with full diplomatic authorization, but the humans didn't meet them at the expected location. Instead, a single vessel, small, unarmed, unremarkable, appeared out of nowhere and guided them toward a planet that didn't exist on any star chart. The journey took 4 cycles, during which the Creel ship's sensors detected nothing but empty void. Then, without warning, a planet materialized. Earth, the human homeworld. Hidden behind technology, so advanced that it bent reality itself. First, Representative Vic stepped onto the human landing platform with her 6 legs trembling. She had served the Creel hive for 200 cycles, negotiated peace treaties with warrior species, brokered trade agreements with xenophobic empires. Nothing had prepared her for the sight of Earth from the surface. The sky was blue. The air was breathable. The gravity was crushing. And the humans walked through it all like they owned the universe. "We've prepared a facility for your delegation," a human guide said. The creature was small by Creel standards, but Vix had learned not to underestimate them. "Our scientists will answer your questions, but you need to understand, everything you're about to see is classified at the highest levels. We're showing you this because we want you to believe." Vix clicked her mandibles in acknowledgement. "We believe what we saw in the council chamber. The weapon is real. The threat is real. But we need to understand how it works, how it was built, and whether it can be deactivated." The human guide smiled. It wasn't a reassuring expression. "That's why you're here. We're going to show you exactly how the fallback protocol operates. Then you can decide if you want to tell the rest of the council." The facility was buried beneath Earth's surface, protected by layers of armor and energy shielding that made Vix's stomach churn. She descended into the depths on an elevator that took 20 minutes to reach its destination. When the doors opened, she saw something that made her reproductive cycle freeze. Thousands of devices filled the cavern. They were arranged in geometric patterns, each one a sphere no larger than her smallest leg segment. They pulsed with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat, as if they were alive, as if they were waiting. "The fallback protocol is based on entropy manipulation," the human scientist explained. His name was Dr. Kale, and he spoke with the calm confidence of someone who had accepted his work's implications. "Every device in this network is connected through quantum entanglement. When one activates, they all activate. The effect propagates faster than light because it doesn't travel through normal space. It travels through the fundamental fabric of existence itself." Vix reached out a trembling appendage toward one of the spheres. "What does it do, specifically?" Dr. Kale's expression shifted. For a moment he looked like a creature carrying an impossible burden. "It unmakes the universe, not by explosion or fire, not by any force you'd recognize. It eliminates the forces that hold atoms together. Gravity collapses. Electromagnetism becomes meaningless. The strong and weak nuclear interactions, the things that keep quarks from flying apart, they just stop working." Vix pulled her appendage back. "That's impossible. Fundamental forces don't stop working. They're woven into the fabric of reality." "Reality is a construct," Dr. Kale gestured at the spheres. "We learned that during our nuclear age. We came within minutes of destroying ourselves, and in those final moments we asked ourselves a question. What if we lose? What if we're wiped out? What if our enemy doesn't just conquer us but erases us entirely? The answer we found was this: we would make sure they didn't benefit from our extinction." The human guided Vix through the facility, showing her the history of the project. It had started as a theoretical exercise, a thought experiment for physicists who were themselves survivors of extinction. But as humanity expanded into the galaxy and encountered hostile species, the theory became a necessity. They built the first devices in secret, hiding them beneath their cities, inside their colonies, aboard their vessels. "The network is distributed across all human territories," Dr. Kale explained. "Every colony has devices. Every major city has devices. Every vessel has devices. The total number exceeds any count you could imagine, and they're all linked. If one activates, they all activate. There's no central control. There's no off switch. There's only the trigger." Vix's cognitive processors struggled to process the scale of the weapon. What triggers the activation? What makes the network activate? The human's eyes darkened. Death, specifically human death, the death of our species as a whole. If humanity's population drops below a certain threshold, if our reproductive capacity falls too low, the network activates. But that's not the only trigger. If an external force attempts to eliminate us, if we're attacked in a way that threatens our survival, the network activates. It's automatic. It's inevitable. There's no way to stop it. Vix felt her legs tremble. "You've made yourselves a species-level dead man's switch." Dr. Kale nodded slowly. "Yes, But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that the network also activates if we choose to activate it. If our leadership determines that the galaxy has become too dangerous, too hostile, too determined to destroy us, they can give the command. And every human on every world will die. But they won't die alone. The Creel representative stumbled backward. Why would you tell me this? Why would you reveal your entire strategy? Because we need you to understand. Dr. Kale's voice carried no anger, no threat. It carried sadness. We're not conquerors. We're not warmongers. We're survivors who have been pushed too far. Every attack, every incursion, every hostile action has brought us closer to the edge. We've absorbed losses we shouldn't have absorbed. We've offered peace to species that tried to destroy us. We've done everything we could to avoid using the fallback protocol. The human gestured at the network of spheres. But we built this because we know what happens to species that don't prepare. We know what happens to civilizations that trust their enemies. We know what happens to people who believe that their survival is guaranteed. Extinction is always waiting. And if extinction is waiting for us, then we want extinction to be waiting for everyone. Vix forced herself to speak. You would destroy the galaxy to avenge your species. We would destroy the galaxy to prevent our species from being destroyed. Dr. Kale's voice hardened. It's not vengeance, it's deterrence. We're not threatening you, we're warning you. There is a difference. A threat is a promise of action. A warning is a promise of consequence. The Creel representative spent 3 cycles studying the fallback protocol. She interviewed scientists, engineers, military commanders. She visited human colonies and saw the devices embedded in their infrastructure. She watched simulations of the network's activation and witnessed the destruction of simulated universes. She learned everything there was to learn about humanity's ultimate weapon. By the end of her visit, Vix understood something she hadn't understood before. The weapon wasn't designed to be used. It was designed to prevent its use. The humans had created a system so terrible, so absolute, so undeniable that no rational species would ever risk triggering it. It was the ultimate expression of their survival instinct, the refusal to die alone, the determination to make existence itself dependent on their continued existence. The weapon can't be deactivated, Vix said at her departure. It can't be destroyed. It can't be negotiated away. It's part of humanity now. It's part of what makes them human. Dr. Kale nodded. We didn't choose this burden. It chose us. But we carry it because we must. Because if we don't carry it, no one else will. And if no one else carries it, then the next species that tries to destroy us will succeed. And then the galaxy will learn the real cost of ignoring humanity's warning. Vix returned to the Galactic Council with evidence. She presented recordings of the facility, diagrams of the network, testimonials from human scientists. She explained the mechanism, the scale, the inevitability. She told them everything she had learned. The council didn't believe her. They accused her of being compromised. They accused the humans of fabricating evidence. They accused everyone except themselves of being wrong. The Valthari Empire demanded a preemptive strike. The Tyrol Ascendancy offered to lead the assault. The Athari argued for diplomacy. And the Creel delegation watched their species' survival hinge on the refusal of others to accept the truth. Vix returned to her homeworld and did something she had never done before. She gave up. She accepted that the galaxy would destroy itself, that no one would listen, that humanity's warning would go unheeded until it was too late. She accepted that she had failed her species, her civilization, everything she had ever believed in. But she also accepted something else. She accepted that the humans had done what they had to do. They had created a weapon that ensured their survival. They had accepted the burden of genocide to prevent their own genocide. They were monsters. They were heroes. They were both. And when the time came, when the galaxy pushed them too far, they would show everyone what they had built. Vix waited for the end. It came faster than she expected. The Tyrol Ascendancy moved with precision that had characterized their military campaigns for 3,000 cycles. Admiral Threll commanded a strike force of 42 vessels, each equipped with weaponry designed to crack planetary defenses, each crewed by warriors who had never known defeat. Their objective was simple: destroy Earth before the humans could activate their weapon. Their intelligence indicated that the primary device was located on the homeworld. Destroy Earth, and the weapon would be destroyed with it. Threll's flagship, the Annihilator's Shadow, dropped out of hyperspace at Earth's coordinates. The ship's sensors scanned the system, searching for the planet's location. They found nothing. No planet, no ships, no bases, no sign of human presence. "Admiral," the sensor officer reported, "the planet is not here. There's no debris, no energy signature, nothing. It's as if Earth never existed." Threll's carapace rippled with confusion. "Scan again. Expand the range. Look for cloaking technology, dimensional pockets, anything that would explain the planet's absence." The sensors scanned. They found nothing. Earth was gone. The human homeworld had vanished. "The humans have moved their planet," Threll concluded. "Somehow, they've developed technology that can relocate entire worlds. We need to track them. We need to find their new location." But there was no tracking. Earth had simply ceased to exist in this system. The ships that had been stationed here were gone. The colonies that had surrounded the planet were gone. There was nothing but empty space and the cold light of distant stars. "The humans have activated their weapon," another officer suggested. "They've destroyed themselves." Threll considered the possibility. "No, if they had activated the weapon, we wouldn't be here. The effect would have propagated through the galaxy. We would be dead. The fact that we're still alive means the weapon wasn't activated. It means the humans retreated." Retreated where? How could they move an entire planet without leaving a trace? The answer came not from Threll's officers but from his ship's computers. A transmission appeared on the command channel, a human transmission, broadcasting from inside the Tyrol fleet itself. "You were warned." The voice was Soren's. Threll recognized it from the council recordings. The human ambassador had become a nightmare, a specter haunting every military commander's thoughts, and now his voice was coming from inside the ship. "Admiral Threll of the Tyrol Ascendancy," Soren's voice continued. "You entered human space with aggressive intent. You intended to destroy our homeworld. You intended to eliminate our species. Your actions constitute a violation of the terms we laid out before the Galactic Council. Your species has initiated war against humanity." Threll's tactical displays flickered. Systems began to fail across the fleet. Engines shut down. Weapons went offline. Life support started to falter. Something was disabling their ships from within. "Your weapon cannot be neutralized," Soren's voice continued. "It cannot be destroyed. It cannot be escaped. It is everywhere, embedded in every piece of human technology, and your ships are full of human technology. Your engines were built with human components. Your weapons were manufactured with human resources. Your very existence in this galaxy has been made possible by human innovation." Threll's carapace trembled with rage. How could we not have known?" "Because you didn't ask," Soren replied. "You assumed we were primitive. You assumed we had nothing to offer but conquest. You underestimated us, just as you have underestimated every species you've ever conquered. And now you face the consequence of that assumption." The ships of the Tyrol strike force began to disintegrate, not from explosive force or energy weapons, but from the systematic collapse of their fundamental structures. Metal turned to dust. Energy fields faded. Life support systems failed. Warriors died in their seats, their bodies dissolving into nothing. Threll watched his fleet die around him. He watched his warriors, his proud, invincible warriors, fall apart at the molecular level. He watched everything he had built, everything he had fought for, everything he had believed in, crumble into nothing. "You intended to destroy us," Soren said, his voice carrying no anger. "We're simply returning the favor, but we're not destroying you. We're making you understand. We're making you feel what we've felt. We're making you comprehend that the galaxy has changed. Humanity is not your enemy. Humanity is your extinction. Threll's flagship collapsed around him. The Annihilator's shadow, a vessel that had conquered 100 worlds, dissolved into particles of dust. Threll floated in the void, his carapace cracking as the entropy field consumed him. He saw his ships disappear. He saw his warriors vanish. He saw everything he had ever known end. But he didn't die. The entropy field stopped at the edge of his personal space, leaving him alive but helpless. He floated in the vacuum, his survival suit keeping him alive, as a human vessel approached. Soren appeared on Threll's communication display. The human ambassador looked tired, but not triumphant. He looked like someone who had done something terrible and accepted the burden. "You're alive," Soren said. "We kept you alive. We want you to return to the Galactic Council. We want you to tell them what you saw. We want you to tell them that humanity's warning was real, that our weapon is real, and that the galaxy will die if anyone attacks us again." Threll's mandibles clicked with rage and despair. Why? Why didn't you kill me? Why leave a witness?" "Because we need you to be the message," Soren's voice softened. "We don't want to destroy the galaxy. We want to prevent its destruction. We want the Council to understand that the fallback protocol is not a threat, it's a guarantee. If the galaxy tries to eliminate humanity, we will eliminate the galaxy. It's that simple." The human vessel departed, leaving Threll adrift in the void. His survival suit had enough power for 3 cycles. He would be rescued by a salvage ship, just as Tikar had been rescued. He would return to his homeworld, broken and traumatized. He would tell the Council what he had seen, and they would refuse to believe him. But Threll didn't care about the Council anymore. He didn't care about his species or his civilization or his career. All he cared about was what he had witnessed. He had seen his fleet disintegrate. He had seen his warriors die. He had seen the most powerful military force in the galaxy reduced to nothing by a weapon that had been hiding inside their own ships. The humans weren't conquerors. They weren't warmongers. They were something worse. They were patient. They had built their weapons into the very fabric of galactic civilization, ensuring that anyone who attacked them would be destroyed from within. They had turned the galaxy's infrastructure against itself. Threll drifted in the void, his mind trying to process what he had experienced. He had been beaten. He had been humiliated. He had been reduced to a messenger, a warning, a cautionary tale. And as the days passed and his survival suit's power began to fail, he realized something that made his carapace itch with terror. The humans had been planning this for cycles. They had infiltrated the galaxy's supply chains, its manufacturing networks, its military infrastructure. They had ensured that every species, every civilization, every potential enemy was dependent on human technology. They had turned their own position of weakness into a position of absolute strength. When the salvage ship found Threll, he was barely conscious. They pulled him from the void and nursed him back to health. They listened to his story. They didn't believe him. They thought he had suffered some kind of battle trauma, that he had hallucinated the destruction of his fleet. They sent him to a re-education facility, just as Tikar had been sent to a re-education facility. But Threll knew the truth. He had seen the weapon in action. He had felt its effects. He had watched his ships dissolve into nothing. He knew that the humans weren't bluffing. He knew that the fallback protocol was real. He knew that the galaxy was living on borrowed time. And when the Tyrol Ascendancy ignored his warnings and prepared another assault on human space, Threll did something he had never done before. He deserted. He fled his homeworld, his species, his civilization. He fled everything he had ever known because he knew what was coming. He knew that the next attack would be the last. He knew that the humans would finally use their weapon. He knew that the galaxy would die. Threll found refuge among the Creel. He told Vix everything. He showed her his records, his memories, his scars. He made her understand what he had seen, and together they prepared for the end. Because the end was coming. The galaxy had refused to listen. The galaxy had refused to believe. The galaxy had pushed humanity too far, and now the humans had nothing left to lose. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so divided. Representatives shouted over each other, their translation systems creating a cacophony of accusation and denial. The Valthari Empire demanded immediate military action. The Creel advocated for continued diplomacy. The Athari wanted to study the human weapon and find a countermeasure. And the Tyrol Ascendancy, still reeling from the loss of their strike force, had retreated into paranoid isolation. First Representative Vic stood at the center of the chamber, her 6 legs trembling with exhaustion. She had spent cycles trying to make the council understand. She had presented evidence, testimony, and the scarred body of Admiral Threll, who sat in a medical pod nearby. Nothing had worked. The council refused to believe. "You're asking us to accept that a species we considered primitive has created a weapon that could destroy the galaxy," the Valthari representative, a new ambassador named Karath, growled. "That's not a negotiation. That's an ultimatum. We don't negotiate with ultimatums." "Then what do you negotiate with?" Vix's voice carried a note of desperation she couldn't hide. "The humans have demonstrated their weapon twice. They destroyed the 5th Assault Wing at New Terra. They destroyed the Tyrol Strike Force without firing a single shot. They could have destroyed the entire Tyrol fleet. They chose not to. They chose to send a message instead. That's not the behavior of conquerors. That's the behavior of survivors." Karath's mandibles clicked dismissively. "They're survivors who threaten our existence. There's a difference. Every species in this chamber has the right to defend itself. We have the right to eliminate threats to our survival." "And what happens when you try to eliminate humanity?" Vix gestured at Threll, who stared blankly at the chamber's ceiling. "What happens when your fleet disintegrates from within? What happens when your ships turn against you? What happens when your civilization is reduced to dust?" The chamber erupted again. Some representatives shouted for war. Others shouted for peace. The Athari flickered with energy, their arguments incomprehensible to most species. The Creel struggled to maintain order, and somewhere in the chaos, Vix realized what was about to happen. "Order," she shouted, her voice amplified by the chamber's systems. "Order, please. We cannot make decisions based on fear. We must make decisions based on evidence. And the evidence is clear. Humanity has created a weapon that could destroy us all. We have 3 choices. We can attack them and trigger the weapon. We can negotiate with them and hope they're willing to compromise. Or we can accept their terms and allow them to exist in peace. Those are the only options." Karath rose from his seat, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the chamber's lights. "The Valthari Empire chooses attack. We will not be held hostage by a species that refuses to play by the rules. We will not surrender our sovereignty to a threat from a planet we could have conquered cycles ago." "You couldn't conquer them then," Vix responded. "You won't conquer them now. You'll just trigger the weapon and end everything." But Karath wasn't listening. He had already walked out of the chamber, his delegation following in his wake. The Valthari Empire was preparing for war. The Tyrol Ascendancy would follow. The Athari would stand aside, waiting for the outcome, and the Creel would be left to pick up the pieces. Vix returned to her delegation's quarters, her legs barely able to support her. Threll was there, still staring at nothing. His mind had broken when he saw his fleet disintegrate. He was a shell, a reminder of what awaited anyone who challenged humanity. "We've failed," Vix said, collapsing onto a resting surface. "The Council refuses to listen. The Valthari are preparing for war. The Tyrol are hiding in their territory, licking their wounds. Everyone believes they can defeat the humans. Everyone believes they can find a way around the weapon. Everyone believes they'll survive." Threll's voice was flat empty. "They won't." "I know," Vix closed her eyes. "I know they won't, but I can't make them understand. I've shown them everything. I've brought them the evidence. I've brought you living proof of what the humans can do, and they still refuse to believe." They believe. Threll whispered. They just don't care. They believe that they'll be the exception. They believe that their species is special, that they can find a way to defeat the humans without triggering the weapon. They believe in their own superiority. That's what's going to kill them. Vix opened her eyes. What do you mean? Every species in this chamber believes the same thing. They believe they're stronger, smarter, more capable than the humans. They believe that the humans are primitive savages who lucked into a weapon they don't fully understand. They believe that if they just attack quickly enough, just strike hard enough, just destroy Earth before the weapon can be activated, they'll win. And they're wrong. El's voice gained strength as he spoke. I was like them. I believed in my fleet. I believed in my warriors. I believed in our ability to destroy anything that threatened us. And then I watched everything I believed in dissolve into dust. I watched my warriors die without firing a single shot. I watched my flagship come apart at the molecular level. I watched everything I had ever known end. And I realized that I was wrong. I had always been wrong. The humans weren't primitive. They weren't savages. They were survivors who had learned the only lesson that matters. Existence is fragile, and the only way to protect it is to make it absolutely clear that destroying it has consequences. Vix sat up, her legs steadying. So what do we do? If the Council won't listen, if the Valthari won't listen, if everyone refuses to accept the truth, what do we do? Threll met her gaze for the first time. We warn the humans. We tell them what's coming. We tell them that the Valthari are planning another attack. We give them the chance to defend themselves. And then what? Then we hope. We hope that the humans are as merciful as they claim to be. We hope that they won't activate the weapon. We hope that they'll find a way to defeat the Valthari without destroying the galaxy. We hope that our warnings will make a difference. Vix considered his words. It was a desperate plan. It was a plan built on hope rather than certainty, on faith rather than evidence. But it was the only plan they had. The Council had failed. The galaxy had failed. Humanity was the only hope left. She contacted the human delegation through channels she had established during her visit to Earth. She told them everything. She told them about the Valthari's plans, the Tyrol's isolation, the Athari's neutrality, the Creel's desperation. She gave them everything she knew. The response came within hours. Soren's face appeared on her communication display, his expression unreadable. We've known about the Valthari's plans for cycles, he said. We've been monitoring their military movements. We've been tracking their fleet deployments. We knew they would attack. We knew it was only a matter of time. Vix's mandibles trembled. Then why haven't you done anything? Why haven't you activated the weapon? Because we don't want to destroy the galaxy. Soren's voice carried no anger, no threat. We built the fallback protocol to prevent our extinction. We built it as a deterrent. We built it as a guarantee. We never built it as a weapon of aggression. We never intended to use it. Then what will you do when the Valthari attack? Soren's expression shifted. For the first time, Vix saw something other than calm control. She saw weariness. She saw sorrow. She saw a creature that had been pushed too far and was about to push back. We'll do what we've always done, he said. We'll survive. We'll find a way. We'll make sure that the galaxy understands that humanity is not to be trifled with, but we'll do it without activating the fallback protocol. We'll do it through military action, diplomacy, and the sheer determination to exist. We'll prove to the galaxy that we don't need a doomsday weapon to defend ourselves. We'll prove that we're more dangerous than the weapon we built. Vix felt a surge of hope. You can do that. You can defeat the Valthari without using the protocol. We've done it before. We've been doing it since the First Contact War. We've absorbed losses, rebuilt our forces, developed new technologies. We've been preparing for this moment for cycles. We knew that sooner or later the galaxy would try to destroy us, and we've been planning our response. Soren's voice hardened. But we've also been planning something else. We've been planning for the worst-case scenario. If the Valthari attack and we can't defeat them, if our survival is threatened, we will activate the fallback protocol, not as an act of aggression, as an act of survival. We will not die alone, we will take the galaxy with us. Vix felt her hope turn to terror. You're still threatening us. I'm warning you, Soren's voice carried no malice. I've always been warning you. The galaxy has refused to listen. The Valthari have refused to listen. Everyone has refused to listen, but we will still try. We will still fight. We will still do everything we can to avoid using the protocol. But if we fail, if the galaxy forces our hand, then we will have no choice. The protocol will activate, and everything will end. The Valthari fleet assembled at the edge of human space. 200 warships, the largest military force ever gathered by the Empire. They had reinforcements coming from the Tyrol Ascendancy. They had support from a dozen smaller species who feared humanity's power. They had everything they needed to destroy Earth, or so they believed. Admiral Karath commanded the assault from his flagship, the Imperator's Wrath. He had studied the humans' tactics. He had analyzed their weapons. He had prepared countermeasures for every scenario. He believed he was ready. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we're receiving reports from the Tyrol. Their fleet is delayed. They encountered an unexpected resistance at the boundary of human space. Karath's mandibles clicked with annoyance. What kind of resistance? Human ships, Admiral, small vessels. They're using hit-and-run tactics. The Tyrol are unable to break through. Karath felt a moment of unease. The humans had known they were coming. They had positioned forces at the boundary, anticipating the assault. But that was fine. He had expected resistance. He had prepared for it. Order the fleet to advance, he commanded. We'll break through the human lines and proceed to Earth. The Tyrol can join us when they arrive. The Imperator's Wrath surged forward, its massive engines propelling it toward the human homeworld. The fleet followed, weapons charged, shields raised. They were ready for anything. But they weren't ready for what came next. The humans didn't engage them directly. Instead, they used the same tactics they had used against the Tyrol strike force. They infiltrated the Valthari fleet systems, disabling engines, weapons, shields. They turned the Empire's own technology against them. Valthari ships began to disintegrate from within. Admiral, the tactical officer shouted, our systems are failing. We're losing control of the ship. Karath's mandibles trembled with rage. How are they doing this? There are human components in our systems. Our engineers didn't realize they were there. They've been hiding in our supply chains for cycles. The humans have taken control of our ships. The Imperator's Wrath shuddered. Alarms blared. Life support began to fail. The crew scrambled to contain the damage, but it was too late. The humans had already won. The Valthari fleet was dying. Karath watched his flagship disintegrate around him. He watched his crew fall. He watched everything he had believed in crumble into dust. And then he heard Soren's voice over the ship's failing communication systems. Admiral Karath, you've been defeated, your fleet is destroyed, your species is broken, you have two choices. You can surrender and live, or you can resist and die. Karath's mandibles clicked with defiance. I will not surrender to a species that threatens my existence. Then you will die. Soren's voice carried no emotion. But before you die, I want you to understand something. The humans aren't conquerors. We aren't warmongers. We are survivors. And we will continue to survive no matter what the galaxy throws at us. The Imperator's Wrath dissolved around Karath. He floated in the void, his survival suit keeping him alive. He watched his fleet vanish. He watched his warriors die. He watched everything he had ever built end. And then he watched as the humans began to broadcast a message across the galaxy. Valthari Empire, you attacked us. You threatened our existence. You forced our hand. We have defeated your fleet without activating the fallback protocol. We have demonstrated that we can defend ourselves without destroying the galaxy. We are not conquerors. We are not warmongers, we are survivors. And we will continue to survive, no matter what the galaxy throws at us. Karath's mind broke. He had seen his fleet die. He had seen his species defeated. He had seen everything he believed in destroyed. And as he drifted in the void waiting for rescue, he realized that the humans were right. They weren't conquerors. They weren't warmongers. They were something else entirely. They were the galaxy's reckoning, and the galaxy had failed its test. The human message continued. This is our warning to the galaxy. Attack once more and everything ends. We don't want to destroy you. We want to coexist with you. But we will not allow anyone to threaten our existence. If you try to destroy us, we will destroy you. It's that simple. Karath closed his eyes. He had heard the warning before. He had ignored it. He had believed in his own superiority. He had believed that the humans were primitive, weak, incapable of defeating him. He had been wrong, and his species would pay the price. The salvage ships found Karath 3 cycles later. He was barely alive, his mind broken, his body scarred. He was brought to the Galactic Council just as Tikar and Threll had been brought. He told them what he had seen. He told them about the human infiltration, the disintegration of his fleet, the impossible defeat. He told them that humanity didn't need the fallback protocol to destroy them. They had already destroyed them from within. The council listened, but it was too late. The damage had been done. The galaxy had attacked humanity one too many times, and now the humans had nothing left to lose. The Galactic Council assembled one final time. Representatives from every species gathered in the chamber, their expressions a mixture of fear, anger, and despair. The Valthari Empire had been decimated. The Tyrol ascendancy had collapsed. The Athari had retreated into isolation. The Creel were the only species still willing to negotiate. Ambassador Soren stood at the center of the chamber, his delegation arrayed behind him. He looked older than he had before, his eyes carrying the weight of everything he had seen, everything he had done, everything he had been forced to accept. "Honored representatives," he began, "we have defeated the Valthari invasion. We have demonstrated our ability to defend ourselves without activating the fallback protocol. We have proven that humanity is not a threat. We are a species that wants to coexist with the galaxy." First Representative Vic stepped forward, her legs trembling. "Ambassador Soren, we accept your terms. We accept your warnings. We accept your desire for coexistence. We want to move forward. We want to build a new relationship with humanity." Soren shook his head. "It's too late for that." Vix felt her hope die. "What do you mean?" "We've already activated the protocol." Soren's voice carried no emotion. "Not the full cascade, a localized version. We've targeted the Valthari Empire's homeworld and the Tyrol Ascendancy's territories. Their species have been eliminated. Their populations are gone. Their civilizations have been erased from existence." The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted, screamed, demanded explanations. Vix felt her legs give way beneath her. She collapsed onto the floor, her mind unable to process what she had just heard. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do that?" "Because the galaxy refused to listen." Soren's voice carried no anger, no regret. "We warned you. We gave you cycles to respond. We demonstrated our weapon. We explained our intentions. We did everything we could to prevent this outcome, but you refused to believe us. You refused to accept our terms. You forced our hand." Karath, the Valthari representative, rose from his seat. His mandibles were trembling, his eyes wide with terror. "You destroyed my species. You killed everyone on my homeworld. Why? Why couldn't you just defeat our fleet and leave us alone?" "Because you would have attacked again." Soren's voice hardened. "You would have rebuilt your forces. You would have found new allies. You would have tried again. We couldn't allow that to happen. We had to make an example. We had to show the galaxy that our warnings were real. We had to prove that we would do whatever it took to survive." Vix struggled to her feet. "You've become the monster you were trying to prevent." "Perhaps," Soren nodded slowly. Perhaps we have, but the monster was always there. It was inside us. We built the fallback protocol because we knew what we were capable of. We knew that if we were pushed too far, we would push back, and we would push back harder than anyone could possibly imagine. The chamber fell silent. Representatives looked at each other, their expressions reflecting a single unified emotion: despair. Humanity had done what they said they would do. They had destroyed the Valthari and the Tyrol. They had demonstrated their power. They had proven that their warnings were real. Ambassador Soren, Vix said, her voice barely above a whisper, "What happens now? What happens to the rest of the galaxy?" Soren met her gaze. "The protocol remains active. It will remain active for as long as humanity exists. If we are attacked again, if our existence is threatened again, the protocol will activate fully. The entire galaxy will be destroyed, not just the attackers, everyone, the Creel, the Athari, every species that exists. The galaxy will become a graveyard." "But we accepted your terms." Vix's voice carried a note of desperation. "We accepted them. We weren't going to attack you. We weren't going to threaten your existence. Why punish us for the actions of others?" "Because we can't trust you," Soren's voice softened. "We can't trust anyone. We've been attacked too many times. We've been betrayed too many times. We've seen too many species promise peace and then break their promises. The only guarantee we have is the protocol. The only assurance we have is the knowledge that if we die, everything dies with us." Vix felt her legs give way again. She collapsed onto the floor, her mind unable to process the weight of what she had just heard. The galaxy was doomed. Humanity had created a weapon that ensured their survival, but at the cost of everyone else's existence. The galaxy would always live in fear. The galaxy would always be one attack away from annihilation. But there was something else in Soren's words, something that Vix hadn't noticed at first, something that made her hope flicker back to life. "Ambassador Soren," she said, "you mentioned that the protocol is active, but you also mentioned that it's localized. It targeted only the Valthari and the Tyrol. It didn't destroy the entire galaxy. Why?" Soren paused. "Because we chose not to destroy everyone. We chose to destroy only the species that attacked us. We chose to show mercy to the rest of the galaxy." Vix felt her hope grow stronger. "Then there's still a chance. There's still a chance to negotiate. There's still a chance to find a solution that doesn't involve the destruction of everyone." "The solution is simple." Soren's voice carried no emotion. "Leave humanity alone. Don't attack us. Don't threaten our existence. Don't force our hand. If you can do that, the protocol will never be activated. The galaxy will survive. Everyone will survive. It's that simple." Vix nodded slowly. "I understand. I'll make sure the Council understands. I'll make sure everyone understands." And she did. She spent the next 3 cycles traveling the galaxy, telling every species what she had learned. She told them about the Valthari and the Tyrol. She told them about the human weapon. She told them about the protocol and the price of attacking humanity. She made them understand. Some species listened. Others didn't, but it didn't matter. Humanity had made their point. The galaxy understood, and the galaxy would never attack them again. 300 cycles passed. The galaxy had changed. Humanity was no longer a threat to be destroyed or a species to be conquered. They were a constant presence, a reminder of what could happen if the galaxy pushed too far. They had become guardians, protectors, and judges. They had become the galaxy's reckoning. The Earth had been rebuilt. The human homeworld was again a thriving center of civilization, its cities gleaming under the light of a sun that had seen everything. Children played in the streets, adults worked in their fields, and everyone knew what their species had done. In a schoolroom on the colony of New Hope, a young human named Arya listened as her teacher explained the protocol. It was the standard lesson, the one every human child learned. She had heard it 100 times, but this time something about it felt different. "The protocol was designed to prevent our extinction," her teacher said. It was built because our ancestors remembered what it was like to face extinction. They remembered the Ice Age. They remembered the nuclear war. They remembered what it felt like to be erased from existence, and they vowed that no one would ever erase them again. Arya raised her hand. "Teacher, what happens if the protocol is activated?" The teacher's expression shifted. For a moment she looked like someone carrying a terrible burden. "If the protocol is activated, the galaxy ends. Everything ends. Every species, every world, every star, it all disappears. There's nothing left, just darkness." Arya felt a chill run down her spine. Why would we do that? Why would we destroy everyone? Because we couldn't allow ourselves to be destroyed. The teacher's voice carried no emotion. Our ancestors made a choice. They chose survival over everything else. They chose to make sure that no one would ever threaten our existence again. And they succeeded. No one threatens us now. No one will ever threaten us again. Arya thought about what her teacher had said. She thought about the protocol. She thought about the weight of what her species had done. And she felt something she had never felt before. Sorrow, not for herself, not for humanity, for the galaxy, for all the species that had been destroyed, for all the lives that had been lost. "Teacher," she said, "is the protocol still active?" The teacher nodded slowly. "It's always active. It will always be active. As long as humanity exists, the protocol exists. It's part of who we are. It's part of what makes us human." Arya felt her sorrow grow. She had never questioned her species' decision to build the protocol. She had never questioned their right to survive. But now, as she thought about what the protocol meant, she started to wonder. Was survival worth the cost? Was existence worth the burden of carrying a weapon that could destroy the galaxy? She asked her parents that night. They sat at the dinner table, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the room's lighting. They looked tired, as if they too carried the same burden. "Mom, Dad," Arya said, "why did we build the protocol? Why did we make something so terrible?" Her mother's expression softened. "We built it because we were afraid. We were afraid of extinction. We were afraid of being erased. We were afraid of what would happen if we didn't protect ourselves. But we could have protected ourselves differently. We could have built weapons that didn't threaten the entire galaxy." Her father nodded slowly. "We could have. But our ancestors didn't trust the galaxy. They didn't trust other species. They believed that the only way to ensure our survival was to make it absolutely clear that destroying us meant destroying everything. They believed that the fear of annihilation was the only thing that would keep the galaxy from attacking us." And were they right? Her parents exchanged a glance. Yes and no. The galaxy never attacked us again. The protocol worked, but it also made us into something we never wanted to become. It made us into monsters. It made us into the very thing we were trying to prevent. Arya thought about her parents' words. She thought about what it meant to be human. She thought about what it meant to carry the burden of the protocol. And she realized something that made her heart ache. The protocol wasn't just a weapon. It wasn't just a deterrent. It was a promise. A promise that humanity would never die alone. A promise that the galaxy would never forget what humanity had done. A promise that survival came with a cost. "Mom, Dad," she said, "what if the protocol activates? What if someone attacks us and we're forced to use it?" Her mother's expression grew dark. "Then everything ends. The galaxy ends. Everyone dies, and we'll be the ones who killed them." Arya felt her sorrow deepen. She couldn't imagine living with that burden. She couldn't imagine being responsible for the destruction of everything. She couldn't imagine carrying the weight of the protocol on her shoulders. But she didn't have to imagine. She was living it. Every human was living it. The protocol was part of their existence. It was part of what made them human, and they had to live with it every single day. "Mom, Dad," she said, "I don't want to be responsible for destroying the galaxy. I don't want to carry that burden." Her father reached across the table and took her hand. "Neither do we. Neither does anyone, but we carry it because we must. Because if we don't carry it, no one else will. And if no one else will, then the galaxy will have no reason to leave us alone. We carry it because we have to, and we carry it because we choose to. Arya thought about her father's words. She thought about the choice. She thought about the burden. And she realized that she had a choice too. She could choose to carry the burden. She could choose to accept the weight of the protocol. She could choose to be human. And that was what made humanity dangerous. Not the protocol, not the weapon. The choice. The choice to carry the burden. The choice to live with the weight of existence. The choice to survive no matter what. The galaxy feared humanity because of the protocol. They feared humanity because of the weapon. They feared humanity because of what they had done. But they didn't understand the real threat. They didn't understand that the protocol wasn't the weapon. It was humanity itself. It was the choice to survive. It was the determination to exist. Arya looked out the window of her home. The stars were shining. The galaxy was alive. And somewhere in the depths of space, the protocol was waiting. Waiting for humanity to be threatened. Waiting for humanity to be pushed too far. Waiting to end everything. But humanity wasn't threatened anymore. Humanity had become the galaxy's reckoning. And as long as they existed, the protocol would remain dormant. The galaxy would survive, and humanity would continue to carry the burden. Arya turned away from the window. She had a choice. She could carry the burden. She could accept the weight. She could survive. And that was exactly what she was going to do, because that was what it meant to be human. The end.